having to downgrade that lifestyle, having to cut a lot of things. It was sacrificing the perception that I wanted others to have of me. So I had to sacrifice that, sacrifice the ego, sacrifice financially, had to sacrifice our lifestyle, had to do a lot of things that most people would have just caved in and given up. But those are like the tests of sacrifice. And it's because of the time that I spent living in Nigeria, and because I learned these tests, I was properly prepared to pay the price for getting and reaching my goal. What is going on? What is going on? Welcome back to Founders Fire. Now, today we're going to be continuing what we talked about last week about like the 3 tests of success every single founder has to endure in order to reach that point of breakthrough and start building momentum for their company. Now, the first one was a test of uncertainty. If you start something, it is scary when you're trying to adopt or make a pivot, when you're having to launch your product or implement some type of go-to-market. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknowns, right? And you have to be able to overcome that test of uncertainty and the anxiety that comes with the level of uncertainty with starting a business. And I shared about like the first time I launched my first company, I was terrified. I had to have somebody else start and schedule the posts for me to get things kicked off. And then the second test is the test of perseverance. Now, the test of perseverance is going to test your resolve. It's going to test your patience. And patient just means long suffering. How long are you willing to suffer and eat glass to build the skill sets that you need to reach that point of breakthrough and to ultimately to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be? Now, that test could be probably one of the longest ones that you'll have to endure, that test of perseverance. I feel like God really likes to stretch how long you think it's going to take to get somewhere. Because the Bible says a day for God is like 1,000 years for us, or 10,000 years, whatever that says. So that means like just our perception of time and how long it's going to take to get somewhere. If you're praying about it, it's going to take a really long time. But for God, it's like, oh, I just snapped my finger and it happened, right? Meanwhile, for us, it's like 10 years later. And then the third test is the test of sacrifice. What are you willing to give up to get to where you want to be? Now, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you have to say no to a lot of things. You have to give up a lot of things, because what's going to happen is as you're making progress, right, you taking the leap, you've overcome uncertainty and you started doing the damn thing, and you're working and you're persevering and you're putting in the grind and you're figuring out and you're solving problems and you're enduring and eating glass and staring into the abyss. And then there'll come a time where in order to reach that point of breakthrough, there's some baggage that you're carrying that you have to be able to let go. And those baggage will present itself as just repeat patterns that are preventing you from getting to that next stage. All right. And some of those could be drinking. It could be late night outs. It could be fraternizing. It could be playing video games, procrastination, sabotage. There's just a lot of things that can come that prevents you from getting to that breakthrough. And one of the biggest things is going to be that this test of sacrifice is probably the one that prevents a bunch of people from reaching that point, because they're just not willing to give certain things up that are hindering their progress. For me, probably the test of sacrifice is probably one of the easier ones for me to be able to pass, because I've been so used to going out and I've been so used to living with little. Right? I've seen my mom sacrifice for us day in and day out. She was a single mother of 4 boys. So seeing her sacrifice and how much she had to give up just to provide us and keep our heads above water, I feel like God kind of like prepared me for when the time came for me to make the sacrifice. I had somebody to be able to look at as a real life example of what that looks like and what that's going to take to be like, okay, cool. All right. I gave up everything to go live in Nigeria and work on a mission team for 3 years. I gave up my job. I gave up my comfort. I sold everything and I lived there in a third world country for 3 years, for 3 freaking years, eating one meal per day because we only had enough money to feed everyone. We had to make the money work and we had to spread it across multiple people. All right. And I would put in like 30 to 40,000 steps a day just to get to the destination that I needed to go. And then there were people who would travel anywhere from 5 to 6 hours just to come to church, the church that we were building. So sacrifice is something that God has thoroughly prepared me for it. Right. I've gotten malaria. I've almost died several times. I've almost been kidnapped while I was in Nigeria. In order to make that leap to come to Nigeria, I had to overcome the test of uncertainty and I had to overcome the test of sacrifice. And it was terrifying. I was terrified. When I got there, I did not leave our house for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, I did not leave because I was just, everything was different. Nobody looked like the people that I'm used to seeing when I was going out in California. The weather was terrible. There was so many loud noises. It was so crowded and I was just overwhelmed. Like it was a true culture shock. So this all happened before I started my first business. So I'm in this third world country. I'm suffering for 3 years. 3 years. I straight up moved down there and started working there, fully immersed into the culture, into the country. I lived where the natives lived on the main island, on the mainland. So the test of sacrifice, you have to be willing to let go of things that are going to prevent you from making progress. In order for me to make that transition from the comforts of America to go to a third world country, to Lagos, Nigeria, and live on the mainland with the natives, there's two different parts. You have Victoria Island, you have Lekki Island, and then you have the mainland. Victoria Island and Lekki Island are for like super rich people, very wealthy, and typically foreigners go to Lekki. I was on the mainland as a foreigner, and everyone, when they heard me talk, they're like, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be over on Lekki or in Victoria Island? Didn't have the money. So I was like there struggling and suffering just like everyone else, getting malaria just like everyone else, and almost dying every single day just like everyone else. So come to business. And when I made the decision that I was going to come back to the States and start a company that would give me a platform to be able to give back to all the incredible people that I met in Nigeria, I just realized there's a lot of incredible human beings in these third world countries that just are stuck there because they just don't have any other choice. And I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity that I had, being lucky and fortunate enough to be born in the United States and being a US citizen. So when I came back and I overcame the test of uncertainty and it was used to long suffering because I was in the third world country for 3 years. So persevering in my company and persevering to do the hard things inside of my business was just so much easier than doing the hard things that I had to endure in Nigeria. You know, I've eaten maggots, I've eaten snails, I've eaten frogs, I've eaten termites, I've eaten crickets. Like there's just a lot of things that I had to do to survive. So having to struggle and endure hardships in the US to build a company and to build an organization was just like, I will take this hard over that hard any day of the week and twice on Sunday. So the test of sacrifice for me was not really like that big of a challenge. 'Cause the way I look at it was a temporary sacrifice for a long-term satisfaction. All right. So the lots of tests that I had to endure early on was when I launched my software consulting company, Systems by Design. I got slapped with a lawsuit early on, and somebody who essentially said they would pay me for a bunch of stuff that I built out. When it came time to pay, they weren't willing to pay the licensing fee for all the tech that I built, all the systems and automations that I built. They weren't willing to pay the licensing fee. And then when I took the stuff that I built and repackaged it and I wanted to launch my own thing, I get hit with a lawsuit. And they were essentially thinking that they could squeeze me out and they could drag it out and bleed me dry financially, because I was just starting. I didn't have any money. So I had to figure it out. So for me, I was like, this guy thinks that they can they can put me through enough pain to get me to quit and not pursue this path. First thing I took that as confirmation from God that I am on the right path, because this person is trying to stop me from pursuing this path. So that means what's on the other side of it is going to be worth it. All right. And then two, I was like, you have no idea the kind of shit that I had to endure just to get back here to be able to start this company. And you think a little lawsuit and a little financial stress is going to stop me? Like, you have no idea who you're dealing with. And so that was a hard situation to endure, right? I was getting bled dry financially to get this business going, and then also to fight this lawsuit. So I had to travel to Texas. I had to find like the cheapest lawyer that I can find. And I was just so fortunate. God was so good to me that he helped me find one of the most incredible lawyers for pennies on the dollar. He was so damn good, and he knew the law so well. And I was so fortunate because he was like, you know what? This case is so ridiculous. I'm not even going to take a retainer. All right. I'm going to charge you hourly and we'll spread it out so that you can pay me in very small chunks so that it can be palatable for you. Super, like, he's an older gentleman. And I was just so grateful. I was like, man, God, thank you for helping me find this incredible human being. All right. And so we were able to, that's how I was able to endure the hardships of that time. And so a lot of sacrifices had to be made. I was recently engaged, and we had to postpone our wedding date. We had to downgrade our lifestyle. And we had to do a lot of things to essentially get to our expenses low enough to where I could, one, continue building this business and building this company and fight for my life in court. And not a lot of people knew what was kind of happening. Actually, at the time, a lot of people knew what was happening because the guy was out there like bragging about what he was doing as if he was doing anything noble, right? And then he took liberty upon himself to drag my name through the mud, slander me a bunch. And I said nothing about him. I'm still, to this day, I've never publicly or privately said anything negative about him as far as like defamation, because for me, it's just not worth it. I want to live in a way that honors God, and I want to build a business that I can be proud of. And I want to do things in a way that I look back 5-10 years from now, I don't have to worry about having to go out and apologize for things that I did because of immaturity. Right. So that time was so stressful. It was so stressful. And it forced me to really think through, like, what are the things that matter to me? What are the things that matter to me? And ruthlessly, anything that did not fit into building my relationship, building my business, or getting closer to God, like those things got ruthlessly cut out. So I was not hanging out with friends. I was not going out on the weekends. We were not going on expensive date nights. We were not going on expensive trips. We weren't doing anything. We had one car that was virtually paid off. It was like $150 to $200 a month as far as like the payments goes, very close to being paid off. And we had to we had to flip. I had to take out a few different loans and had to take out some bad debt, and just to kind of keep ourselves afloat, keep the business going. And grateful enough to where the business started building some traction to where we're able to pay things down and pay things off. But that was probably one of the most difficult situations I've ever gone through in my entire life. All right. Emotionally, as far as physically, Nigeria was hands down. Nothing comes close to Nigeria. Like nothing even comes close to Nigeria. But emotionally, this was probably one of the hardest things I had to go through. And then also dealing with the sacrifice of ego, right? Up until then, like I was moderately successful and was starting to build some traction. And people were like, wow, like Iggy, we're so proud of you. And so having to downgrade that lifestyle, having to cut a lot of things, it was sacrificing the perception that I wanted others to have of me. So I had to sacrifice that, sacrifice the ego, sacrifice financially, had to sacrifice our lifestyle, had to do a lot of things that most people would have just caved in and given up. But those are like the tests of sacrifice. And it's because of the time that I spent living in Nigeria and because I learned these tests, I was properly prepared to pay the price for getting and reaching my goal. So ultimately, because I was already prepared for that, I wasn't like, oh, like, why me? I was like, okay, this is a test of sacrifice. Do I believe in the direction that I'm going enough to sacrifice what is required to get there? So for you, if you're going through a hard time right now, if you're launched your startup, you're in the thick of it, or maybe you're on the other side of it and you're looking at your next thing, remember these 3 tests: the test of uncertainty, the test of perseverance, and then the test of sacrifice is the third one. And there's one more that I didn't mention that's a bonus, and that is the test of success. The test of success. Very few people get to experience and break through the first 3 tests to even experience the test of success. But I will tell you right now, the test of success is by far the final boss, because if you pass the first 3, you're going to experience breakthrough, you're going to experience momentum, and what's going to happen is you're going to experience hubris. Your ego is going to get inflated. You're going to feel like anything that you touch turns to gold. You're not going to remember how hard the bad times were. And there's going to be a level of arrogance that you'll have until either you humble yourself or the Lord breaks out the hammer and humbles the hell out of you. Ask me how I know. Because I failed that 4th test so miserably so many times. And so now, I mean, God has finally gotten it through to me. And I'm like, you know what? I don't even want to take credit for anything, any kind of success that we're experiencing. I don't want credit for any momentum that we're getting. Don't tell me I'm doing a good job. Don't tell me, oh, wow, like I'm like, I don't care. It's God. God is the only reason we've made it this far. And he's the only reason we're going to continue to make any kind of progress. Like, I don't want room for anyone to try and say that I did it on my own, because I didn't. But that test of success is going to require you to be able to look out the window. Look out the window and lift others up and give praise to others for helping you get to where you are. If you start to experience success and you start looking in the mirror and be like, I did that. I endured. I sacrificed. And you start looking yourself in the mirror. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what your faith system is, like universe, whatever it is. You are essentially challenging a greater force that you have no power to overcome. You're challenging that force to humble you and show you otherwise, which is what happened to me. All right. This test of success, we're able to build momentum and turn that company that struggled so hard to start, turn it into a multi-million-dollar company. And then that created a surplus of capital. I put that into crypto and then turned that into like several million. It was like $40,000 in crypto and turned that into multiple millions. And then semi-retired. I was just like, just gonna do F all and started playing video games and just stopped really caring. And then God was like, okay, you went through all of that. You went through the uncertainty, you persevered, you sacrificed, and you reached the top of the mountain, or so you think you have. And now you're just not doing anything. All right, here we go. Bam, hammer dropped, pretty much lost everything in a span of like a year and a half, and had to go through that entire process again and go through the test of uncertainty, go through the test of perseverance, go through the test of sacrifice. And now we're starting to gain some momentum. And I'm like, God, I am ready for this test of success. And I'm just going to let you know right now, I refuse to let anyone say that it's me doing the work. It's not. So hopefully you found those tests helpful. My goal is I wanted to prepare you, to equip you, and hopefully the burns that I've experienced can shine a light to help you avoid some of the mistakes and some of the pitfalls that I've had to endure. But hopefully you found this helpful. Go ahead and comment your 6-word update. What are, like, in 6 words or less, what resonated with you and why? Right, 6 words or less, what resonated with you, and then share your case in point and explain why. Well, till next time, stay calm, change lives, and not business on your terms. Peace.